And we are live. I have the man Mike G here with me. Mike, what's going on?
Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. How do we
Damn,
do?
even got the time zones right there. That's next level. But dude, I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I appreciate you making the time on a Sunday morning to come on the show and share some of your knowledge with the viewers. So first of all, for
Yes.
anyone who might not know who you are, it's kind of blasphemous, but we'll forgive them. For anyone who might not know who you are, give us an idea of who's Coach Mike G and what do you do?
Yeah, so if we're in an elevator and we get to discussing about, you know, our past and what we do for a living, I am a performance coach. I work with predominantly NBA athletes, but that doesn't necessarily mean only NBA athletes, but as of right now, mostly NBA athletes. And a performance coach is what I would define as somebody who looks at many different avenues that make up the overall performance level of
Yeah.
a given athlete. So what that means
Hmm.
is if we look at training obviously is a big component of performance. That's anything that has to do with the weight room and or movement training. I
Yeah.
do that. That's kind of like my bread and butter. And then also, what else does performance involve? It also involves nutrition. Nutrition is a big
Yeah.
part of the recovery process as well as the rebuilding process. So I also consult in nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist by trade, but I know about it because I know the impact that it has on performance levels. And then lastly, recovery. Recovery is something that could be defined as the ability to um, adapt to a stimulus. So
Yeah.
that could involve sleep, that can involve, again, nutrition, also recovery modalities, which is strategy that expedite recovery. And that's things like cryotherapy, massage therapy, different types of stretching modalities. So we look at all three of those things. We also have a built-in mindset component that isn't something we focus
Yeah.
on specifically, but anything that involves interaction with humans, I feel like you need to have some understanding of how their mind works and how to get them going, how how to push and pull. So that's essentially kind of in a big nutshell of what I do for a living and who I am.
Awesome. And I'm curious, how did you get into the space and now ultimately working with high level guys like Jrue Holiday, Anthony Davis, people of that nature? Like, how did you break into the strength and conditioning space, the performance space?
Mostly the same way a lot of people get their big break, and that's a lot of hard work. Um,
For sure.
Not necessarily uh, anything that anything special, just making sure you're always trying to get better every day educationally,
Yeah.
learning from the people that you respect, which then involves you being in the right place at the right time. I think a little bit of I don't call it luck, but opportunity,
Yeah.
and then being prepared for that opportunity when it does come. So for me, in my instance, I started my career in Los Angeles, which obviously puts you in a good position to be seen. There's a lot
Yeah.
of people that come out here in the off season. There's a lot of performance gyms. A lot of pro athletes are out here. So this is somewhere that may be a good starting point for someone like me. And then being unafraid to be seen and be heard and to not look like the kid that is too overconfident or thinks he knows too much. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, quiet, closed mouth don't get fed. I'm a firm believer of that,
Facts.
and not to overspeak and have disrespect amongst your peers and or higher ups, because I was obviously at the lower level when I first started,
Hmm.
but to allow your voice to be heard and to be fearless when it comes to that. And I think that people take notice to that. They recognize confidence, and athletes at the end of the day want to be around people that are confident in what they're doing and what they know.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like that's what kind of set me up to be in the position to work with high level athletes from all major sports of the world. And, every year I just made a point to continue to get better at my craft, whether it was
Yeah.
coaching, understanding the social aspect of coaching, understanding emotional intelligence, and then also just learning the nuts and bolts of what strength and conditioning is and develop my philosophy. So it's a big gumbo
For sure.
of components that need to be the right temperature at the right time in order for it to happen. But I feel like we are in charge of the ingredients that go into that gumbo, to
Absolutely.
use
No, that's a
a New
great answer.
Orleans analogy.
Love it, love it. Now, fast forwarding to the current situation, obviously with COVID and the whole quarantine situation, that drastically affected the off season, which really isn't even an off season because it's resuming in a couple weeks
Mhm.
here. But that drastically affected things. How did that impact your approach to working with Jrue?
Drastically, simply because we didn't possess the same resources, meaning gyms,
Yeah,
equipment, etc. And we didn't know what we were training for. At the time,
yeah,
it was a big question mark. It was the NBA season was suspended, and suspended means we're gonna push pause until we know what we're gonna do, and we might even not continue the season. So those two components dictated the natural evolution of what training was going to be and how I felt the direction we wanted to go. And first and foremost, we were 3 quarters through the season, so obviously lots of inflammation in the body,
yeah,
little aches and pains from the rigors of playing 30 to 37 minutes a game. And Jrue's a physical guy. If you watch basketball and you know who he is probably one of the better defenders in the world on ball and in the post. He defends 1 through 5.
yeah,
So he accumulates a lot of wear and tear. So first and foremost, number one, let's get all this inflammation out. Let's get the body feeling good again, like October going into camp. We have the time, why not? So we slowed things down. We did a lot of table work. We did a lot of non-impact pool work. We went back to the drawing board and got his body feeling good again. And
yeah,
then once we were clear of all the pain and range of motion was restored back to normal levels for him in his joints, we then took to the football field. And I've been very active on social media, as have
yeah.
everybody, in demonstrating how I've been utilizing the football field to train a basketball player. I myself was a college football player at the Division II level,
Gotcha.
so it was a natural knack for me. I can take anybody through football drills, and that's you to your mom to Jrue Holiday.
Yeah,
And we just did a bunch of receiver drills with the emphasis of NBA, with the emphasis of basketball footwork and basketball style change of pace and basketball style cutting and tempo. And at the end of the day, it worked really well for us because it was fun. And as you know, during this crisis and pandemic, the psychological
oh
aspect of
yeah,
things were very, very critical and just trying to keep people mentally healthy. So for
yeah,
him, it was fun. So that was a win. When you get someone smiling and laughing and enjoying movement outside with a lot of vitamin D, which, as you know, NBA players are usually low in vitamin D.
hmm,
Um, it was just a perfect environment. And then obviously for me, I was a kid in a candy store because I
yeah.
love football. Football's my first love. So that's kind of the beautiful, mesh that kind of happened.
Got you. And I think that whole situation kind of highlights your creativity, and that's something that's really highlighted in like your social media content, like all the work that you're doing. How did that come about? Like, how did you develop this creativity inside of your programming, inside of what you do, to have the instinct to go, okay, we're going to go on the football field now. Oh, we're going to implement
Mhm.
trampoline work, which we'll get into later, and sand work and pool work and a bunch of other like kind of, I guess, not
Sure.
really unconventional, but you don't see them every day in terms of
Right.
athletes working out and training. So how did that come about in your philosophy?
I got to give a lot of credit to a man named Scott Mitchell, and he's my mentor and first performance coach that I kind of looked up to and watched very closely. And his
Yeah,
philosophy was a philosophy that involved variability, a lot of psychological aspects of the athlete in terms of engagement and
yeah,
play. Because whenever you play something, it's no longer work, right? So sometimes training can be work, and work is not fun. So how do we get work to be fun? We play.
Yeah.
And he introduced a lot of these components to my training philosophy, in which I adopted from him. And that's what unpeeled the onion's layers, so to speak, in terms of how to create this very special environment that's dedicated towards improving an athlete's ability to play their sport, which means create an environment that looks and feels like play. Now, sometimes that can be very challenging because at the end of the day, that 405-pound barbell needs to be picked up.
Yeah.
I don't know how to make that fun, but involving an aspect of play into every session may take someone who's in a bad mood in the beginning, 180 that bad mood into a good mood. I got them laughing, smiling, sweating, enjoying themselves. And now all of a sudden they are more motivated to pick that 405-pound barbell up versus if I walk into the weight room, I'm in a bad mood for whatever reason. And now you're asking me to pick this weight up. I don't think I'm going to want to do that. Or I might not even have the mental willpower to do that, right?
Yeah.
So not to digress too much, but that's kind of how I developed the idea of creating this environment of play, which goes into changing environments. Let's go into the sand, like you said. Let's go into the water. Let's go on the football field. Let's create this environment of play, which will maximize psychological and motivational ability to take you from the world for this 1.5 hours or whatever length that we're training, to give you the best opportunity to grab all the low-hanging fruit of what training can bring to your body. Because the mind controls everything. And if the mind isn't ready to be trained or ready to impose stimulus on, it's going to give you 60%. It's going to give you a partial of what you can truly give. And as you know, if you want to maximize training, you want to have maximal intent most of the time, right? So if I'm going 60% in the drill, I'm probably not going, my brain's not going to process that as something important to remember or learn, right? So if I get you going 90 to 100% in the drill, not necessarily intensity wise, but really engaged, now my brain's going to actually learn this is important and this can be applied to something that I need to get done later in the future. So that's kind of how and why I create this environment of play, which has led to all the different creativity and modalities of training environment as well as training methods.
Got you. And then kind of building off of that, how much emphasis do you place on like actually being in the weight room, like lifting heavy weights, like doing like barbell back squats and deadlifts and stuff like that inside of your training? Is it a major component? Is it kind of split evenly among the other modalities that you use? Like where does that kind of fit into the puzzle?
This question is a very obscure answer called "it depends,"
Favorite answer.
And that basically means it depends on the athlete. What does the athlete need?
Yeah.
What are the demands of the sport? What does the athlete bring to those demands of his or her sport? And then can the weight room benefit those needs for his or her body and sport as it applies to their sport? So if we use Jrue Holiday as an example, look at the demands of his sport and the position as well as his style of play, right? Because not everybody wants to guard LeBron in the post. Not everybody will guard LeBron in the post.
Yeah.
Me neither. So the Pelicans ask him to do things like that. So he needs to be ready for that physically. That's not just a willpower thing. That's not just a technique thing. That's literally 250 to 270, whatever LeBron is, versus 220. And do I have the muscular ability and leverage and stability and all these different cool words that we have in our our world to not only guard LeBron in the post, stand him up, but also contest a shot or pull the chair out or whatever he decides to do.
Yeah.
So that means that Jrue Holiday needs to be strong. And the weight room obviously is a great way to maximize strength. Now, basketball strength is very different from weight room strength. However, we can leverage weight room strength to create a base and solid foundation for said strength needed in basketball. So if I'm pushing up against LeBron and he's 270, my legs have to be able to support that, but also my My trunk needs to be very stiff, but at the same time, the ability to find the awareness of any weight transfer shift so that if he tries to spin, I can cut him off. So now that involves agility with my feet, awareness, leverage, strength in my legs, strength in my shoulders and hands because I might be, pushing into his lower back. So all these components combined, not to mention the mental aspect of, oh, what does LeBron like to do in the post? And you combine all these things, and the answer is absolutely. The weight room can definitely contribute to the success of the athlete on court. So if I look at Jrue, and I know he needs to be able to do these things, the weight room is going to be a big part of our training.
Cool. And then, like you mentioned, there are a bunch of different pieces to that puzzle as far as what goes into even just guarding an offensive player in the post, much less the whole game of basketball. How do you like fit all these different pieces into your training? Like, do you really focus on like periodization, like throughout the course of the off season? And if so, like, how would you periodize a basketball player's off season in a normal sense? Obviously, COVID kind of threw a wrench in that, but for a typical off season, how would you approach that when working with the Hooper? Oh, looks like we are cutting out. Mike, can you hear me? Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
No worries. I saw you staring, and I was like, damn, he's really focused, and then it just froze. How much of that did you hear?
You said there's a lot of components that goes into guarding, and then that was it.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying was, obviously, there's a lot of components that go into even just guarding someone in the post, much less the whole game of basketball. And how do you fit all those different pieces, all those different needs into a training program? Like, are you working on multiple things at the same time, or like periodizing that over the course of an off season? Like, how do you kind of make all those things work in sort of like a cohesive fashion, so when the game comes around, players ready?
I think that when the season comes to a conclusion and I get with Jrue's skill coach that he works predominantly with the team, and we sit down and we talk about what was good that he did and what was bad. Not bad, because you don't want everyone. What does he need work on, right? What can he improve on? And then they're always going to go into all the technical aspects of basketball. He needs to be able to do this, and I'm just like, okay, that's great, but that's not me. That's not something that I'm going to be working on. Let's really talk about the physical attributes and things that lead to those skills as a basketball player. And then, he'll say, for instance, he needs to be better off his left foot, which is not true. He's amazing off his left foot. He needs to be better off his right foot. And obviously now I'm like, okay, I can use that. That's good knowledge. That's good information, because that means that he probably is a little asymmetrical. He likes to go off his left foot, left to right all the time. There may be some imbalance, obviously, that applies to the entire chain of the body. And is that more of a coordination thing, or is that more of a physical insufficiency, right? So is it because he can't go off his right foot because he doesn't have the ability to, from a motor standpoint, from a horsepower standpoint, he just feels more explosive off his left? Or is it because he chooses not to because he's more efficient with his right hand? So we'll take that component, we'll take all the other components, and we'll break them down by physical attribute, and then how do we improve those. And then, just like most performance coaches, we do periodize. Usually the off season is 3 to 4 months, so we get a nice chunk of time that allows you the ability to truly periodize. And then, like you said, we're always working on something every day. And now, one thing that people need to realize is that if you told me as Jrue's coach, he needs to be better off his right foot, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be jumping off his right foot every day. I mean, there are many ingredients that go into the single leg jump, right? There are many different strategies that you can impose to improve a single leg jump, and that doesn't involve jumping. So that means that we can implement something in the warm-up every day that might improve big toe mobility, that will unlock a little bit of dorsiflexion, which will actually improve single leg jumping. So,
Gotcha.
just being able to understand functional anatomy, how it applies to athletic performance, and then attacking that and those components every single day. Because obviously we don't want to be jumping every day because that's very stressful on the body.
Yeah. Gotcha. And something you mentioned there was the warm up. Is there a typical way you like to get a basketball player ready for a workout, whether it be skills training, whether it be performance training? Would that differ at all? So, like, what would your approach be when it comes to the warm up?
No, the warm ups very consistent, and it follows the methodology of a man named Ian Jeffries, and he's a world-renowned performance coach who really has broken the field open in terms of movement and agility. So
Gotcha.
like less weight room stuff, but more application into motor control, coordination, and things like that. And he uses a protocol called RAMP, and RAMP
Okay.
is an acronym for raise, activate, mobilize, and like power or plyo type
Mhm.
aspect idea. So raise is basically raise your body temperature, raise your heart rate, raise your muscular temperature, so that everybody knows raising things makes you a little more elastic and mobile and
Yeah.
stretchable and malleable, and it just prepares the tissues to accept load and force. So the raise aspect can involve anything that gets those things bubbling.
Hmm.
And I like to start guys on the trampoline because the trampoline again introduces that aspect of play
Yeah.
because it's fun, smiling. Uh, we'll train guys in groups, so they'll be talking and jiving with one another back and forth while jumping on the trampoline. And I like that because it again opens the room up, and you got to get guys open. It's 9:30 in the morning sometimes. Guys didn't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's early for them, and they're still wiping
Yeah.
the stuff out their eyes. So how do we get them to already shift into the direction of the ability to and preparedness to take stress? So the raise component is trampoline, some type of small sided game, anything that we can think of to raise the muscle body temperature as well as heart rate, as well as create some psychological happiness.
Hmm. Got you. Got you. And then I kind of building off the subject of the trampoline, like you mentioned, it's fun. I know something you mentioned on one of the other podcasts you've done is its ability to improve lymphatic flow. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the circulatory system, which is powered by the heart. And the job of the heart is to circulate blood, fresh blood, oxygenated blood throughout the
Hmm.
body. And then it goes all the way down and back up and gets reoxygenated and stuff like that, if you've
Yep.
taken a physiology class.
Yep.
And that's actually a muscle, right? That's an active situation. It's a involuntary, involuntary contraction that happens. That's dictated by the vagus nerve, I think. And that's something that is a driver of blood, of
Hmm.
circulation. The lymphatic system is essentially your detox system. It kind of gets rid of all metabolites and bad things that's kind of hanging out within the body, and it's a big part
Hmm.
of your immune system as well. So just overall health is very, very important and dictated by the lymph system, which is why when you go to the doctor, they kind of feel around in here, and what they're looking for is swelling in your lymph nodes, right? So if you have swelling in your lymph nodes, that's kind of an indication that there's an infection of some sort. So it's just a sign or symptom that yes, you might be sick. The only difference between the lymph and the circulatory system is the circulatory system is pumped by a muscle called the heart, whereas the lymph system does not have a pump.
Mm.
It will remain static if you remain static. And the whole thing is that how and why do we want lymph circulation and lymph flow, or lymphatic drainage is what a lot of people call it. And the more circulation that you have in the lymph system, the better at you're getting rid of bad stuff in the body. So that's something that makes sense, right? Like you don't want just bad things hanging out and chilling out in the body. So how
Yeah.
do we get lymph to flow? And there are two ways that I know of. One, movement. Actually, three ways. One, movement. So if you're moving consistently throughout the day, which is why a lot of people are going into the idea of move throughout the day versus work out 1 hour a day and then do nothing the rest of
Mm,
the day. Because if you look at ancestral history, hunters and gatherers were moving throughout the entire day before they went to sleep. Whereas we just kind of think, okay, I got my 1 hour workout in, now I can just chill for the rest of the day. Not necessarily the case if you want to be as healthy as possible. Create lymphatic drainage by moving throughout the entire day. Get a stand-up desk. Get a trampoline. Every hour, everyone has an Apple Watch. Set a reminder to get up, do some stretches. Do some office agility is what I call it, and that's basically get up out of your desk, do a couple squats, do a couple push-ups, do a couple stretches, go back to work, right?
yeah.
So this is why it's important to move throughout the days because you need that lymphatic drainage. Number two, rebounding. And that's basically what Paul and I were talking about on the PGF Performance podcast is when you rebound on a mini trampoline or trampoline in general, even jump rope, you're creating lymphatic drainage. You're creating lymph circulation. And I'm not sure who was quoted in saying this, but I do remember this. NASA, um, pretty smart people, dubbed trampoline rebounding as one of the healthiest things you can do.
Really?
So if NASA says do it, everyone should be doing
Yeah.
it. And then the third thing is vibration. VBT,
Mm,
vibrate, full, no, full. Anyways, power plate training essentially. I
yeah.
forget the acronym. And that's basically a vibrating platform that you can control the speed of as well as the height of the vibrations. And the best brand that I can think of and which I use is called Power Play. And basically, doing static stretches or static ISO holds on the vibration platform also is super effective at creating that lymphatic flow. So that's why lymphatic drainage is such a very important thing, just in the ability to live life at a high level,
Yeah.
not just athletes, and it should be practiced by anyone that's upright and human.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, for the rebounding aspect of it, would something like, for example, jump roping work as well if someone can't get their hands on a trampoline?
Absolutely, absolutely. Jump roping is definitely something that has been studied and shown to create that lymphatic flow. However, a lot of people can't jump rope from a coordination standpoint, and also older people maybe aren't able to because of their
Mm,
joints and they just have pain.
yeah.
So jumping rope is something that is also effective, but not necessarily available to a specific population. However, they have trampolines now, mini trampolines with rails, handrails that you can hold on to as you jump.
Oh, no way. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, I feel like this is a tool that can be done by anybody and everybody. Low impact, fun, health benefits. Why wouldn't you?
Cool, cool. And then in terms of using the trampoline for reasons besides like the lymphatic drainage, and obviously it's fun and enjoyable, like what functional purpose would it serve like in a training program as far as like from a performance standpoint?
Yeah, so the ramp protocol that we just spoke of, the P power plyo aspect is really speaking towards the brain
Got
and the
you.
nervous system. And if you're creating uh, very fast communication from the brain to the working muscle, it's
Yeah.
going to attribute to a bunch of advantages that help with explosive power, strength, whatever it is, depending on the goal of that session of the day. So being able to do something as fast as possible, as fast as you can, as fast as you can coordinate without the cost of impact is very valuable to me. So if I got you on a trampoline lowered your center of mass and told you to jump as fast as you can or move your feet as fast as you can on the trampoline, you're able to create a motor pattern that implies maximum intent without the detriment of impact in the warm-up.
Yeah.
So that can immediately contribute to the ability to contract, relax, contract, which is very, very important in the ability of skill acquisition in power and being able to relax at super high velocities. Because if you're super tense when you're trying to perform an athletic coordinative movement, you'll kind of cancel yourself out. And a good way to think about this is when Bruce Lee said, if you throw in a punch at somebody, you want to throw your punch with a relaxed fist, and right before contact, clinch. And the reason why is because when you throw a punch with a relaxed fist, you have relaxed musculature not fighting against itself just before you make contact. Squeeze that fist because you're faster that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm able to throw my punch faster, but still have the same power at impact because my hand is lighter. Because if you make a fist tight, it's a heavier hand. But if you relax your hand, it's a lot faster when you throw it. So just before impact, boom, squeeze that fist, your punch is going to be a lot quicker. It's the same idea and aspect of relaxing in a high velocity athletic movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great explanation of that. And then kind of looking into the other modalities like pool training, and we'll get into stand training. Like now shifting into pool training specifically, I know a reason why some people like to use it. You're frozen again. Mike, can you hear me? I think you cut out again. One sec, guys. Let me just make sure we're all good from a connection standpoint. And then while we wait for the connection to get better, let me know in the comments below. Looks like we have some questions already, so we'll get to those in just a few minutes. We'll spend the last like 20 minutes of the podcast, of the interview, going over some questions you guys answered. So definitely be sure to keep commenting down below. Maddie, I see you in here. I appreciate you tuning in. Romel, I appreciate the question. We'll get to that in a second. Gustavo, what's up? Appreciate you tuning in. And let's see. Looks like we lost Mike there. So let's keep it up. There we go.
Sorry, man. I don't know what's going on.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I changed locations. Different
back. You're switching it up. I like it.
Yeah. But, so to finish, that P aspect of the ramp protocol really allows me to utilize the trampoline to capture that and really prepare the brain neural connection between brain and muscle and teach athletes how to contract, relax, contract at a super high velocity.
Gotcha. And then looking at the other modalities like pool training, and we'll get into stand training in a minute here, but looking at pool training specifically, I know a reason why people say they like to use it is because it's low impact and it's a little bit easier in your joints, stuff like that. Like you just said, so is trampoline training. So like what would be the differences there between where you would want to use like something like pool training? Like what would be the functionality of that versus what we just talked about with the trampoline training?
Yeah, I think pool training really depends on the compliance of the athletes, because a lot of athletes hate the water.
Yeah.
Maybe they, from a developmental standpoint, weren't exposed to pool or large bodies of water as a youngster, so they're just not comfortable in the water. But let's say athletes are super open and they're kind of cool with going into the pool. I mean, obviously the recovery aspects of pool training is very high and well documented that, you know, there's a certain pressure that occurs in a pool. Like, as you know, when you go deeper in depth into a pool, you feel way more pressure. That's why your ears start to pop and stuff like that. So that obviously has an effect on the body. So that creates more circulation, that creates more lymph transfer, that creates a super good recovery effect that I like to impose as like a workout recovery day. So
Okay.
active recovery day has really been the tradition of why I started to use pool training initially. But mainly just to change up the environment, like
For
it's
sure.
not something that's needed every week per se. It's not something that I try to make sure I do every single week or every other day. It's just something that I really enjoy using as a switch up, just changing the training environment, keeping things fresh. Because for 4 months, 3 months of working out often gets um, what's for lack of a better term, boring. It just it
Yeah.
stays like this. So what can I do to continue to make the athletes happy and um, engaged mentally? And I think that the pool is another way. Obviously, the water temperature must be at a certain degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they will not get in. Cold water is not people aren't a fan of. And I think that that's the main reasons why we go into the pool.
Gotcha. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then kind of rounding out the discussion about these different modalities, what about sand training? Like what functions
Mm.
does that serve? How often do you implement that? Is there a right way and a wrong way to implement that into a program? Like what role does sand training play in a performance program?
Yeah, I love sand training earlier in the periodization because it's a great way to get guys in shape and really set that nice aerobic foundation and get them
Yeah.
back moving again without doing too much in terms of load on the joints. So we'll throw in 1 to 2 days of sand work um, if the resources are available and it makes sense. And you can really get guys to move at high speeds safely
Hmm.
and create this lactate environment in their body. And lactate environments obviously have a slew of benefit. And if you can do that without loading the joints too heavily, then that I feel like is a really big win. I think that sand training can be extremely fun. Sometimes we'll break out a spike ball set and play spike ball as a warm up in the
That's awesome.
sand, and
Yeah.
obviously, which is amazing. And I'll jump into because it's so fun. And obviously, you lose all wherewithal of where you're at when you're competing in spike ball. It's no longer training. It is a
It's
fun
meditation.
game that I want to. It's meditation and it's fun and it's a fun game I want to beat my peers at. So it gets super competitive, right? Extremely competitive.
Yeah.
But also, I think that being able to put guys in a very uh, random environment in terms of how their foot interacts with the floor beneath them, right? Because the sand obviously shifts as you perform different types of movement, locomotor patterns on it is
Yeah.
good because it just creates some brain variability. It's not something that I feel is the make or break of any training program. I think that if you have the resource, you should use it, but understand the reasons of why you're using it. It's not just, I'm gonna. I'd like to take our athletes to the sand because it looks cool. Well, a lot of things look cool, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make them better.
Yeah.
But if you have the right intention, the sand is an amazing environment to train in, and I highly recommend it. However, if your goals, and I repeat, if your goals are to make guys faster or more explosive, the sand is not the place to do it. And it actually makes them probably slower. Because if
Really.
you train slow and practice slow, you'll probably be slow. And you can't be fast in the sand. I don't know if you've tried. It's not ever going to happen.
Yeah.
You could have the intention to be fast, but you will never be fast and you will never jump high outside of beach volleyball players because those people can get up. But we're not training beach volleyball players. There's a lot of brain things that go into that and motor control and motor pattern and sequencing. But at the end of the day, I don't care how high my guys can jump in the sand because that's not where they live and play. But I do understand that playing a 24-second shot clock, both ends can create a lot of lactic acid in the legs that they need to be able to deal with, sustain, and still be at a high level psychologically. And guess what? We can do that in the sand.
Got you. Definitely makes sense. And then a couple minutes ago, you mentioned obviously the pool temperature being cold. That can be a deal breaker for some guys, and that kind of brought up the thought of, okay, what about like the cryotherapy and ice baths and stuff like that, and kind of transitioning into recovery modalities.
Sure.
What recovery modalities do you find are very effective for the athletes you work with, like
Mhm.
cryotherapy? Anything else that you like to use
Yeah.
very often with your guys?
Yeah, just gonna throw this out there fast and quick, and I think everyone's following this same gravy train. Is that sleep is free and it is the most beneficial recovery tool that you can ever impose on your body. So if you come to me and ask me what is the best way to recover, what tools is it? Normatec? Is cry? I'm gonna first thing I'm gonna ask you is how's your sleep. So
Yeah,
that's first and foremost. So we won't go deeper into that unless it's another question. In terms of tools and modalities, I think obviously if you have the resources of a manual therapist that knows what they're doing, a body worker, that can have amazing benefits. There are, you know, a slew of benefits of what that does for the brain, what that does for the nervous system in terms of shifting from sympathetic to parasympathetic tone and just getting everything to calm down.
hmm,
I think for self care, I think that anything that gets the circulation going is going to be good. So, power plate massage, which is basically where you lay on the power plate and let the vibration do all the work for you.
yeah.
I think the Normatec is amazing, and luckily, it's a very big part of our culture in basketball. A lot of people love the Normatec boots because it's passive, and all you got to do is put the boots on and go on your phone or play video games,
Yeah.
and that's creating circulation, obviously. Um, I really like. I do like cryotherapy from the standpoint of the practicality of it. It's a 3 minute situation that's fast, quick, and easy, and has been shown with consistency to expedite and create some type of recovery benefit. However, athletes have to believe in it, right? Like if you are making people do things that they don't believe in, it's probably not going to work, and it's going to be like pulling teeth to get them in there.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's freaking cold. You know what I mean? Um, I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of sauna too, the heat, and there are a lot of science that shows that a specific sauna protocol can induce a huge endocrine response, HGH, I believe, specifically, which obviously is a huge part of recovery and growth and regrowth and adaptation. And if again, if sauna is available, which it's not too hard to find, infrared sauna especially, knowing the protocol, 20 in, 5 minute out, 20 in, is going to have an amazing benefit on recovery if done the right way with the right intention. Okay, so you're not going to be doing that every single day, right?
Yeah.
And then nutrition, making sure that we're maybe not eating the bad things, the pro-inflammatory foods, the sugars, the refined vegetable oils, the red meats. If every day, I'm not saying don't eat red meat. I think people should be consuming red meat, but every day, maybe not. And then
Yeah.
also how you prepare said foods obviously has an impact on if it's pro-inflammatory or not. So those are a few things that we look at in terms of recovery. I don't think that there's a magic bullet outside of good sleep, quality
Yeah.
sleep. And if we can get guys to do one or two things every day, I think that's a win.
Absolutely. And kind of backtracking to the sleep thing a little bit more, because like you said, it is by far the most beneficial, by far the most important, and it's free. Everyone can do it. So want to dive into that a little bit. And obviously, like for NBA players, especially, it can be a little bit difficult to maximize sleep quality and get to sleep and stuff like that, especially during season when you got late games, you got to get on a plane right after, going to
Mm.
another city and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What things have you found to work really well in helping guys sleep better, whether it be get to sleep earlier or improving the
Yeah.
overall quality of when they are asleep?
Education, hands down. And what does that mean? That means going through a questionnaire of some sort and gathering as much information as possible about the athlete in terms of what they do,
Yeah.
prior to bedtime, what they eat prior to bedtime, uh, what their interaction with sleep is in terms of, do I wake up a lot? Do I sweat in my sleep? Do I wake up groggy? All these different types of questions should be asked and understood. And then troubleshooting strategy on how to repair these different signs and symptoms that are linked to poor sleep. Also, we have the ability to track sleep. And 10 years ago, obviously that was novel. Now
Yeah.
we have things like Whoop Band and Apple Watches that actually track sleep, and the accuracy of said tools are quite high. The Whoop actually has been compared to Stanford sleep protocols, and that's obviously very, very valid.
For sure.
So if you understand, how many disturbances you have per night, how much REM sleep you have per night, how much deep sleep you have per night, now we can start to troubleshoot strategies on how to improve those aspects. So what is your routine? Let's implement a sleep routine or a bedtime routine that you do every night. What is your sleep environment, sleep hygiene? Do you have a cool air conditioned or air or temperature controlled environment? Do you have blackout curtains? Are you cool with implementing blackout curtains? Um, those types of questions and answers need to be asked and understood, because this is what's going to truly change how well you sleep and how well you recover. I think that uh, screen time, especially. Hello?
Yep. Can you hear me? You can cut out there for a second. Mike, can you hear me? Sorry about
Where did I
that,
lose
guys.
you?
1 second. I think you were talking about, what was the last thing you said? I think screen time. Screen time was what you were saying.
Oh, screen time. Yeah. So screen time
Yep.
is something that we is almost impossible to limit from NBA basketball players, because everyone's on their phone or playing a video game, especially in bed.
Yeah.
So how maybe we can implement blue light blocking sunglasses or blue light blockers that help eliminate the blue light coming from the screen and actually turning on wake up hormones in your brain and not going into its sleep time mode. Um, and just figuring out ways to kind of navigate one's lifestyle, how they prefer to live and go to bed, but then giving little strategies that they can implement and insert that work well for them, that doesn't really change much, but still changes the ability to sleep well.
Got you. Love it. Definitely all actionable strategies. Those blue light blockers are a game changer for anyone who has not experimented with those. Because, I mean, like you said, I don't, I mean, in my experience working with guys, it's pretty hard to get them to get off their phone completely, to get off the video games completely. So the blue light blockers have been a really good tool to still be able to do that stuff. Obviously, the stimulation is not like the best thing after you go to sleep, but it kind of is damage control for that. So definitely agree with you there and all the other
Exactly.
strategies. Now, I want to spend the last few minutes here getting into some of the Q&A that we got. Got a bunch of questions from IG, got a few questions in the comments right now. So one of them looks like it's about sleep. So let me bring that up real quick. Matthew asks, does sweating during sleep mean poor sleep quality? Because I tend to sweat during my sleep.
We had an athlete. So initially we had the entire Pelican team wear whoops.
Okay. Yeah.
And whoops is this guy right here that kind of tracks sleep as well as activity.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an athlete specifically that would sweat every night, every single night. And what the data showed from his whoop is that his body temperature was super high, and that would affect his HRV negatively, and his resting heart rate was high. So that opened up the Pandora's box of what his habits were prior to bed, and he was eating a ton of sugar before bedtime. Like he would have his habitual nightly ice cream or candy every single
Yeah.
night. So we're like, okay, so let's just try this. Just try this. Like give me 2, 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
No nightly dessert. And that actually dropped his resting heart rate
Huh.
dramatically, raised his HRV, and now his night sweats kind of went away. So I want to just disclose the fact that I'm not a sleep expert by any means. I probably couldn't um, intelligently tell you whether or not that affects sleep quality. But what I do know through experience is that the answer is yes with the athletes I've worked with, and that when we were able to troubleshoot how to prevent the sleep sweats, that obviously affected sleep quality in a good way, and he was able to recover better.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, probably has to do with body temperature and overall just being too hot. So if you can cool that down, probably help out a ton.
Sure.
This next question we got from Romo asking, "What's up, fellas? Mike, I seen you using boxing mitt work with Jrue as well. Do you have any experience training boxers? And if not, any ideas on what you'd focus on for boxing S&C? Much respect."
Yeah, so I do have a little bit of experience training pro boxers, not from the aspect of technical training. Obviously, I'm not a boxing trainer, but just from the S&C standpoint. So any good performance coach going into training anybody looks at their sport, looks at the movements, looks at the movement demands, looks at the physical demands. So looking at those demands and studying the sport, I've been able to kind of pick up mitt work. And the main reason why I use mitt work with Jrue is, again, the psychological aspect. We've hovered around that topic often because I just firmly believe that it affects how well a training session is absorbed as well as performed. So, like a lot of people, I go on YouTube and study mitt work, type in mitt work in the dialog box and try to figure it out. And, it's a fun learning experience for both parties. So, in terms of the training aspect as it applies to boxers, I think that rotational power is obviously a big component of boxing and being able to throw punches with power and speed. I think that contract, relax, contract aspect of training should definitely be a part of your training protocol because, again, you want to increase hand speed. So being able to implement drills that hover around those types of ideas is very, very beneficial. And then also looking at the conditioning aspect, it's a legacy philosophy. It's passed down since the early 1900s of how to train boxers, and we're still training boxers like they did way back then.
Yeah.
Running miles, doing 10 minutes of jump rope, all these different philosophies on how to get boxers in shape, I feel are outdated and there are better ways to do so. So for instance, if a boxing match is 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, how can I create that environment from a conditioning standpoint, but still touch all the big rocks of what a physical requirement is for a boxer? So I'll set up 3 stations, 1 minute each, of full body exercises that involve high velocity rotational movement. For instance, let's get on the cable machine and do a push pull for 30 seconds on each side, varying tempo. So maybe for the first 15, we're going hard, and the last 15, we're going fast, working on that contract, relax, contract.
Mm-hmm.
Switch sides, 30 seconds. Boom. Next, let's go to a med ball chop where we're half kneeling and doing that rotational contralateral action for 30 seconds on each
Yeah.
side. And then lastly, let's go into some type of crawling pattern, maybe with a weight vest on, controlling your breathing while under stress in that last minute, because as we know in a fight, you're so hyped up that it's hard to relax.
Yeah.
So I've got the guy super tired because they just did 2 minutes of really intense work. Now they have to relax but still do more work that's very uncomfortable as well as full body. So being open to the idea and philosophy that boxing conditioning doesn't need to be miles and miles and miles and miles. Like, we can start to do other things that actually help you be a better fighter and athlete in the ring, but also condition you. So that, Mr. Romel, is how I would answer your question. Look at ways to condition fighters that doesn't involve old school train of thought.
Love it. And then, yeah, you see it a lot with the nutrition side of things too, with like weight cutting strategies for MMA fighters and boxers and in combat athletes. It's definitely something that hopefully continues to evolve and people start to realize there are better ways to go about this.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the next few questions we got from IG. I know we're coming up on the hour here, so we'll try to squeeze as many in as we can. Definitely want to respect your time. I know you got probably a busy schedule. Let me see. Let me pick the most interesting ones. This one's interesting. I think we'll dive into this. For one of the questions, someone from Instagram asked, is the only benefit of stretching just a placebo effect?
That is a question that makes me think of the type of stretching, because there are obviously many different types of stretching. For me personally, I don't think I'm after a placebo effect in stretching. I think that if the athlete needs, let's say, passive stretching because their nervous system is so wound up, or they notoriously have a tight joint or really poor length at that specific region of the body, spending 2 minutes in a stretch is okay. The key and important thing we must understand is we must re-educate that length and that range of motion into the connection of the brain and body. Because if I put you on your back and stretch your hamstring for 2 minutes and don't have your brain use that range of motion actively, then it's not going to stick. You will gain range of motion at that moment, but it will revert back to what it had once before what we stretched. So the important thing is that if you stretch passively for a lot amount of time and you gain that range of motion, you must use that range of motion actively. And that's using your brain actively creating tension at that length. So if I lay on your back and do a hamstring stretch for 2 minutes and we've gained a certain degree of range of motion, now I'm going to have you push into that stretch and actually use that length, that new range that we developed.
Got you. Awesome. Then another question coming from the comment section is, I'm recovering from foot surgery. How can I get my first step back fast? Obviously, kind of a little bit of a vague question, but in general, working on your first step, like what are some things that you would focus on in terms of just creating that explosiveness and being able to get by your defender?
Yeah, first step, a lot of it has to do with coordination in terms of the skill of the movement. So I would look at, let's not talk about based off of recovering from foot surgery, because that's so open-ended that's a whole conversation itself. But let's just talk about, let's say you're healthy and you want to improve first step. First step definitely comes from the know-how to do the first step action in itself and effectively. So we would look at the coordination aspects of the movement itself. And then it's like, all right, unpeel the onion further. What tissues can I improve, make stiff, make more powerful to give you the ability to execute that movement well?
Yeah.
And that a lot has to do with tendon stiffness, foot stability, big toe stability, big toe strength, and really applying performance and strength and conditioning application or philosophy to those types of goals or movement demands. So doing a lot of quick contact plyos where you're doing maybe ankle flips. Maybe your ankle is super pliable, meaning when you try to push off your foot, you have a lot of range of motion before you actually propel, and you lose that stiffness aspect. So being able to do overcoming isos in the ankle joint, which is basically getting into a Smith machine, locking the bar in place, and then trying to do a calf raise against that Smith machine barbell as hard as you can. So you're not moving, but your intention is to move. That's going to create stiffness in that ankle, which is going to apply to a better fast step or quicker fast step. So applying those types of ideas into the ankle joint, creating stiffness, behind a super quality motor pattern is what's going to improve first step explosiveness.
Love it. Love it. Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time. Looks like we just passed the hour mark here, so we'll start to wrap it up. I know I learned a ton from this one. I always say, like, whenever I learn a ton from a podcast interview, I know it's going to be a good one for everyone to listen to. So really do appreciate you taking the time, coming on, sharing some of your knowledge, and adding value to the show. So as people are going away from this, where can they keep up with everything that you have going on? Where's the best place to find you?
Instagram is definitely the platform that I rely heavily on, just my education and content, and that's there you go, Mr. Do It Moving. And that is where you can DM me. I will respond. I am very good at trying to get back to people, answering questions. So please, please, please don't be shy. Hit me up. Give me a follow.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. Doing interviews like this pretty much every week, and tons of nutrition content for hoopers. So if you're trying to get your diet right, this is the place to be. So definitely drop a like, subscribe. We appreciate that. And Mike, thank you again for coming on the show.
Greatness breeds greatness.